sounds good. Tom McKee, Mayor, been going on a year and a half now here? Going on 2 years? So,
My name is Jerry Maples. I have 2 extra months on Tom.
yep.
Alan Schultz, I've been on the council almost 4 years now, planning commission for that.
Dean Bearcamp, appointed by these guys in September last year, was in the planning commission for a year and a half prior to that. We've got a Corcoran resident for 15 years.
He was on the Maple Grove Planning Commission.
That's a whole other thing, that was 20 years over Maple Grove Planning.
I'm John Bottom, I've been on the council for 6 years. I was watershed, what?
The old man of the council.
Yeah.
Grizzled
Veteran,
veteran.
yeah.
Yes, I had here when I started.
I did too when I started this profession.
Yeah.
Perfect.
There you go, sir.
Okay.
You want to be going for each?
Okay.
So we can go all around.
Start with questions?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, we're gonna go this way. So, if you could please just tell us what interests you about this position and highlight the key qualifications that make you the best person for the job.
Yeah, so when I went about looking at the position, when I saw that it had come open, I started looking at all the things that were going on in Corcoran and how I sort of saw that fit for my past experiences, and who I am as an individual, and sort of where I think ultimately that I can contribute to the organization overall and to the community. As I talked about with the department heads in there, being a person that's very team-centered, everything that I picked up, everything I know about the organization from outside looking in and the things I picked up today, it's a very strong team. I think all of you have talked about that equally as well, about the staff that you have and the positive, wonderful things that are going on here. And so I certainly see that I would fit well and mesh well within the team aspect. I think I could contribute a lot to continue to build the team going forward and, helping them sort of, as I've talked to them, take lid off some things maybe they want to try from a staff perspective and keep moving forward in that area. From a community perspective, been involved in community development, economic development, redevelopment for a long time. Know that some of the pressures that are going on in Corcoran, and sort of the balancing act between that and, kind of people maybe not necessarily wanting growth as fast, and how you sort of fit the needle, if you will, in some respects in that area. How you deal with the pressure and at the same time sort of balancing, making sure you're not growing too fast in some respects. The town center project, I've got some experience with downtown sorts of things. Most of that's downtown redevelopment, but the critical aspect of what kind of a downtown aspect or element means to a community is certainly important from that aspect. And I'm a big believer in having those type of areas are very critical for the future of a community, whether it's commercial development, residential redevelopment, or how all those sort of mixes sort of coming together. So I know you're in the process of looking at a new water tower and water treatment plant. I've built water treatment plants before, so a lot of technical experience and in a lot of those different areas, a lot of success in doing a lot of those different things. And so when I look at the position and try to feel how I fit overall and where I think the organization fits me and vice versa, it's really like how I can contribute, the value that I can bring. And I think a lot of those different things that I have would work really well here, and I think would help the council continue to make your decisions going forward and making the right decisions and making those smart decisions, not just for tomorrow, but the next 5 or 10 years coming up as well. So,
Could you please describe your most challenging situation you've had in interacting with the public and how you handle it?
I think, a good example is we had Lennar's doing a development in Rogers, and they had proposed a residential subdivision in an area that was guided for residential development. They proposed some units or types of housing, a little bit more on the dense side, so Rogers doesn't have twin homes in the community, and they proposed some of those homes. They'd done some townhome development in a previous development, so they wanted to continue that. There wasn't really a lot of pushback on the townhome. I think the biggest concern that we were getting from the public is, a lot of people felt, well, this is a development, people that live next door to it, well, I enjoy getting up every morning and seeing the sun come up over the field and the geese landing in the field, and kind of how dare you let them do this development aspect here. And they're like, well, it's guided for residential, it's zoned for residential. There was some concern about the twin home aspect and more townhomes in the particular area. It was really a lot of time, twofold. One was educating the public about, this is really some of the type of housing that we need in the community, getting them to understand that aspect and why it was important for the council to continue working on that aspect. I think it was a planned unit development, so there was some pushback that, well, do they really need it? Why can't they just do what the zoning code requires of it? And for them, it was a struggle to sort of get to the density that was required, that area based on that council standards required. So a lot of education. I think a lot of times when you get into projects like that, there's a lot of misrepresentation, and the public likes to talk about a variety of different things about what's relevant or not relevant tied to the project. They've done an environmental impact statement, and that came back positive. People were concerned about water all of a sudden flooding their backyards because this development was going on. So, it's almost when you encounter those situations where if somebody can think of it, it's going to come out, and people made a lot of different comments that weren't factual. So we just had to sort of keep checking in that, well, that's not an accurate statement, here's a type of information. I will tell you that ultimately the council sort of threatened to deny it at that point, and so we worked back with the developer, and they made some tweaks and adjustments to the development plan overall, came back at the next council meeting to the council's satisfaction, and we were able to get it passed and approved. But in the meantime, we were still sort of the ongoing communication of trying to make sure people understood this is what the development is, this is how it benefits the community long-term. As we look long-term into the community, the desire for wanting these different types of businesses in town, this type of density within this area, and this type of project is going to sort of help contribute to that overall, to be able to help reestablish sort of the commercial base in Rogers that it's kind of struggled over the last 5 to 10 years. So
I think I know the exact case in the development you're talking
it was pretty out there, yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
2 parts, Jason, to this question. Describe how you would build trust with the city council and the staff.
Well, I think you'll learn by me. I'm a very open, sort of direct individual. I believe in being that way because I think the aspect is you want me, when we're working on things, that you want the information. You want to understand what it is. You don't want kind of part of the information. And I think I look at that when I am working with staff, and I like to use the budget as a good example of that, is to make sure that when we're working through the budget process, that the staff is engaged in that they're providing information, and then that we together are coming to the council to present the information, so that it gives you the ability to sort of interact with them as much as with me on kind of, here's why they're looking at something that particular way, here's what the resource needs are, and it allows everybody then to have the discussion about maybe where council's comfortable and maybe where you're not, and they can hear that directly, and you can work through that together, as opposed to just be having to go back and say, well, council said no, and here's why. I think it allows for that better type of discussion. The more interaction that we have with that, the more interaction I have with staff, the more we're sort of working together, I think just lends itself to the ability to build trust that we're all sort of in this together.
So many more questions came out of your answer. I'll stick to the script here. The follow-up, my goodness, that'll keep you heavy. How would you guide or refocus us as council members on this subject at hand in a council meeting? If somebody yells squirrel in the middle of a discussion, for us, we chase that squirrel. How would you refocus? How would you guide us back to the subject at hand?
Right. So I work with planning commission, and so when you have public hearings, sometimes things tend to go sideways. My point will be, the chair there has always kind of leaned on me to say, okay, this is sort of off topic, we need to sort of get refocused, or that comment or that issue really is not pertinent to the issue at hand. Certainly the public is entitled to make their statements, but the planning commission as an example, really, that's not an area that you can comment on or can deal with. We need to focus on this issue over here. With councils, I've had to do that as well, where we're kind of talking about things, and I've had to reset the conversation to say, okay, that's all good information, but this is the question that's being asked. We need to sort of refocus on the question that's here. If there's a side concern or a question over here, we need to deal with that. Let's deal with the issue here, and then let's come back to that discussion. If there's a feeling that it is tied into a motion or a recommendation before the body, then it's okay, well, what's the issue? I would ask you, okay, what's the issue of concern that you're trying to drive at, so we can get it out on the table and have a discussion.
It's mostly for John's issue.
Mostly John.
Everybody else is on.
ADA,
Yeah.
Just kidding.
attention deficit advantage.
Well, I do think in some respects, it's me also understanding, okay, so if the topic is over here and we're over here, why are we over here? To really sort of get an understanding of that. There's been times where we're over here and it's like, okay, let's get this done, okay, let's use this couple minutes to talk about what the issue is, that maybe is pertinent, but not necessarily tied to the action that's before you, so we can, kind of look at that. Because sometimes you'll be maybe approving a development where all of a sudden this issue comes up, well, it's not really tied to this, but if
Yeah.
it's something we should be considering on future developments, we should know about it, so that staff can take that back and look at it with the next development that comes in, so. I've been around for a while, so I don't have any issue sort of speaking up and saying, hey.
You're very seasoned, I can see that. Thank you very much.
All right, the fourth question is, please describe your involvement in the budget and financial process of your organization, as well as your experience with long-range financial planning.
So council will learn about me very quickly, that I'm a strategic planner, I'm a strategic long-term thinker. I think from your perspective, when you look long-range, it doesn't only help you as a council communicate to the community the how and the why, how you're expending funds and where you're going with it, but it helps future councils that are coming on board, make it a lot easier for them to understand where things are at and where things are going. It helps them better plan for utility rate increases if those are necessary, how it impacts the tax levy, and all those sorts of things. So I try to look at having that strategy of here's all the things that are looked at, and I like to broaden it out beyond just capital improvements like streets and utilities, like facilities, vehicles, so that we have a true asset management sort of plan, because all of those things affect the finances of what the city does. So when it comes to the budget process, I like to be able to bring here's everything together, and working with the departments, and with them is present your budget, let's walk through what that looks like, and let's be sure that we're also addressing, like, are we replacing equipment? Are there other things that we have to be addressing? Present that information together, work with them on it. I do like to have, before we even get into a budget discussion, I like to have sort of those pre-council workshops or retreats to talk about what are some of the goals that we're looking at for this coming year, what are some of the issues that we have to address, what are some of the things that the council thinks we need to be focusing on as a staff or as an organization or as a community, to make sure that when we come with our first budget to present, that we're incorporating all those things, so we're starting sort of at here's where we're at, and then ultimately sort of getting down to where all councils are comfortable at different numbers and different levels, and so if some of it's just either we're working our way down to that level, or we say to the council, we want to max out at a certain percentage increase in the levy, while we're at this percent right now, talking through, like, if we don't do these things, what are the impacts and how does that affect other things? And again, having that continued interaction with the departments as we move forward from that aspect. But, like I said, when it comes to the budget process, it's those early conversations. It's the presenting the budget based on here's what the council wants to accomplish, here's what staff wants to work on in the coming year, and then really starting to focus in on, like, what can we do, what do we want to do, and then using those over the next few months to sort of get it to a position that everybody's comfortable with, that you as a council feel that you can then justify and defend with the community.
Thank you.
What would you propose to help the city implement this vision?
Well, I have read, I know you've had a workshop or two on 2020 goals. I read a little bit on the 2021, so some of that would be to get a handle on, are those 2021 goals, are they completed, or are they still in process? And where are we at with those, and what are the next steps? Because sometimes those goals tend to appear on an annual basis, not just one time. So where are we at in the process associated with those? And then really sort of I believe when I come on is to really have a step back with the council, let's have a workshop, maybe just with the six of us in the room, to talk about, like, what are some of the visions and goals that we see long term that we need to accomplish. Revisiting some of those assumptions or things that were put in place from some of the planning work that you've done before, whether it's the comprehensive plan. I think it helps for me to sort of get a good visualization on where we're at right now and what does the council think about those things. Doesn't hurt to also then bring the department heads or key staff in on some other discussions, to have a larger, broader discussion as it relates to here's where we're at, these are some of the things we're working on, these are some of the things we've accomplished. to then sort of help, take those next steps forward. Okay, so now we know where we're at. These are the things that we think we need to be working on or accomplishing. What are the steps that are needed to move forward? So whether that's a council provides some direction in terms of here's what we think the steps are, and staff sort of filling in the blanks to say, okay, in order for us to get there, we need X, Y, and Z in order to get in that direction. So to me, a lot of it's coming into the position, it's just gonna sort of take that, push the pause button, to sort of evaluate where we're at, what are some of the things we need to work on or that we're working on, and then what are the next steps forward at that point.
Okay, the sixth question is, could you describe a time when you made a mistake at work? How did you deal with the situation, and what was the outcome?
So I'll use this as a good example of that was, a relevant example when I was in North St. Paul, we were working on, in the middle of the budget process, or early on in the budget process, the council decided they needed to do some, we were getting lots of requests from the fire department for pretty significant increases in the budget, police department equally as well. And there were some concerns about sort of exploding budgets, if you will, and sort of maybe services or service levels that the council wasn't necessarily comfortable with. So they wanted to sort of take a look at, police services, fire services, and sort of do a little bit of a study to sort of figure that sort of a thing out. So we ended up hiring a consultant, brought them in to sort of do some initial study work. Wasn't going the best. I mean, the interesting timing of the study, Forest Lake was threatening to disband the police department. So that, just in an odd twist, everybody kind of thought that we were doing the same. And that was sort of a precursor to that. And that wasn't, so there was a lot of misinformation out there, so we were managing that, trying to manage that with the department. The department heads in that aspect that, the police department wants to add X number of employees over the next several years. We need to understand what the cost is. The council wants to know what the impact of the budget is and the tax levy. They're supportive of it, but we can't do it all tomorrow. We need to figure out when and how much, and those sorts of things. Same with the fire department. It's great that you want to go to this other type of structure, but do we need to go on to that other type of structure, because there's a significant cost associated with that. So the council really kind of wanted to take a step back and take a look at some big picture things, with the idea that they were supportive of some of these things, just needed to sort of get a better handle on what we were currently providing at service level and how that looked like. I think the relationship-wise between the consultant and the departments didn't go well. Had an opportunity to get out from under the contract, but was getting pressure from the council. Nope, we still need this by this date. So we had to sort of keep going forward. It would be the one thing that I would say that looking back on it is, should have said to the council, this isn't working. We need to stop and push the pause button. And we can still do the study, but we need to rethink how this was going, and maybe we need to find a different consultant that can help us get to that end result. It was a challenge because, being in the middle of trying to manage the direction where we're going and what the council wanted and the council pressured, we got to get this done in this time frame, and then kind of get stuck in the middle, and that was a very difficult time. You kind of felt like you're a little bit of a lonely person in some respects. Ultimately, the project was still going on when I left, and they finally did. I recommended as I was leaving that we just need to be done. The consultant was willing to just separate off, because it wasn't working for them either. And so shortly after I left, they agreed to do it, and they found somebody else that could do the study for them.
So your recommendation was to terminate the
So terminate the
consultant?
consultant.
Please describe your leadership and management style.
So my leadership approach,
Number 2.
You're supposed to be on 7.
Now you asked to.
You did 2 already. Go down to number 7.
No, I didn't do 2.
You did, but you made it in terms of public challenges.
Mine, I did number 19
Got it.
instead of 2, or 20 instead of 2 when I asked the first question.
Okay. Chip?
I'm gonna hold answer now.
Could you repeat the question? Oh, the question is 2, sorry.
Management style.
Yeah, so,
Unless you don't, I don't care.
Oh, it works.
Do it.
We didn't get an answer, or we didn't ask that question. I'm not for
oh, you're fine.
Eighty.
I'm flexible.
88, no, it's 88, attention deficit advantage.
So my leadership style and my philosophy is active and present throughout the organization and community. I think that's one thing I take very serious in my role. I believe the more that I'm interacting with staff, the more that they see me, the more I'm visible throughout the organization, the more that they get to know me, the better relationships I have, the more trust that I can instill in them, and the more trust that I feel they can instill in me. On the community front, very community-oriented person, appreciate opportunities to be out in the community. Again, I think a community like Corcoran sort of has the expectations that the manager or administrator is visible, that's somebody that they know that they can reach out to if they have questions, concerns, and that, in some respects, as much as you can be on a first-name basis with residents and business owners, I think that's critical. And I think the more that I'm active and present in the community, the more I'm engaged with the community from that aspect, I think, again, the more that I'm able to establish the trust and people know that, that anything that they share with me comes back to council and gets worked on with staff in that aspect. So that's the one thing I've always felt very strongly on. I would say every community I've been has had that level of expectation. And just my nature of my personality being a very outgoing individual, that's something that, I enjoy being in a group, talking with people and getting to know people, so it's part of my personality too.
So now do I ask question number 7? Okay. You already answered that.
Why don't you skip to 9
Well, skip to 9. I had my other ones read. Give me a minute.
Yep.
Take a breath, man.
So did we skip the replacement for 8?
And we're doing 17 for 8. So you
Okay,
have
so I'll go back to 17. I read that one. All right, here we go. Describe the efforts you would take to enhance redevelopment and/or residential growth.
We scratched that question.
Skip to 17. Shake the etch and sketch. Try one more time.
How would you deal with senile council members?
Okay.
That was good.
I'm gonna go home. Hey, you need to understand, I had 3 interviews yesterday, and we were here
You had a
till
long
midnight last night.
Yeah, I know, I heard,
Back
yeah,
here today,
yeah.
so it was crazy. Okay, I'm reading 17, is that okay? Do I
Yes.
have consensus? Thank you. During your short visit here, and I hope you continue to visit, and through your research of our community, what are you most excited about?
Well, I think 2 dynamics. I'm going to focus on the staff and the community aspect. So I had a great tour with staff today, very wonderful, bubbly individuals. I always say the public works guys are always the most entertaining. I did enjoy my tour with them, and that was my first interview today.
Kind of like a clown school.
Well, yeah,
Just saying, I love them.
yeah. So that was my first interview. They said, well, you're the manager, we had to start asking you questions. So that was a lot of fun. I think we talked about some different things that they had going on, some my experiences, and doing some of this, or working on some of the things that maybe they had some concerns, or what the long-term future is with some of those things. So those were good conversations. Had great discussion with Jessica, sort of on her brief tour of the park, and Natalie talking about, when you're both in the planning community development side, you can sort of commiserate on a lot of different things that you've worked on and experienced, and opportunities that are going on in Corcoran. So, I think I'm excited about the opportunity to really come in and sort of help you guys sort of take the next steps in the community, what ultimately that looks like. As I said, I'm excited about the town center thing, the St. Therese project. I think that's a huge deal for the community, and it really is kicking off that town center project. That's kind of phase 1 of that. So, hopefully that builds some momentum going forward. And I think the idea to be able to get my shoulder into that aspect is a really interesting, kind of a fun proposition for me. That's some of the things I really enjoy. In Rogers, that's some of the stuff I enjoy, is sort of the creativity aspect of trying to council wants to do this and our plans say that, so let's try and find a developer that can help us deliver that aspect. So trying to be a little bit proactive and trying to find the right developer to do the things ultimately that we want to accomplish. So and with town center, it's going to take some of that work to really find the developer to help you deliver on some of those sorts of things. It's great to wait for somebody to come to you with it, but if that's a goal and priority for the city, it's like, okay, so what aspect of the project do we want to happen next after the St. Therese thing gets going? And so, and can we find a developer that is an interest in helping us to deliver that? So it's really got a plan, you got some momentum on your side with that project, how can you continue that momentum going forward? So those are the types of things I really get excited about. Those are the things I'm really looking forward to sort of helping move along. Like I said earlier, at the same time, it's the understanding about, it's helping Corcoran sort of with that gradual process, because not everybody's going to be in agreement with as things go on, but a lot of it's just making sure that they understand, the community understands that all of this is really intended in the best interest of the community long term, and either we plan it and execute it, or it just happens and then we're not happy with it.
Thank you for putting up with my confusion.
So the number 9 question is, in the development process, how will you ensure that all terms in the development agreement are fulfilled?
Well, when it comes to agreements, I'm very meticulous to make sure that all of the things that have to be addressed in the development agreement are there. I know when I started in Rogers, we probably had 6 different versions of the development agreement, which was confusing because some had this language here and some had that language there. So we really boiled it down to have one basic contract template that addressed all of the basic things. Excuse me, and then we reserved a section in all of our development agreements that were very specific for the development. So if it was a PUD that had certain requirements, if they were supposed to deliver trails or utility things or whatever it was, we made sure all that, build new intersections on county roads or whatever it was, all that information was laid out specifically detailed in there. So at the end of the day, when they came back to the city to say, okay, we've completed our project, we want to close out the development agreement and get our security back and all those sorts of things, we just went right through the development agreement to see, have you satisfied everything that needs to be satisfied? We had things in there like landscaping bonds and warranty bonds and all those other things that we made sure were provided to us. With some of them, we would say, we can either keep the cash that you've got in the bank, or you can provide us with the warranty bond, you doesn't have the cash, because it's there, other than a bond that's out there. So a lot of it was then, just making sure that everything that was in there in the agreement, tying it back to the resolutions of approval to make sure any conditions that were spelled out in there were either brought forward in the agreement or we attached the resolutions to the development agreement. We try with every development, our goal is always to get the developments as close to approval when they're going to the planning commission, and then when they come to council, we're hopefully at the final plan stage, so we're not coming with, here's 85 listed conditions that we have to sit and monitor and keep track of. We want the projects as done as close to the possible that we can. Things like watershed district approval is always difficult to get there. Same with if you're doing a project that impacts the county road, they have to build a new intersection. Those are always difficult to get up to that point. But I, as the planner, even just as a staff professional, it's much better and it's much faster for the developers if you work with us to get all these revisions made before we're in a position to because otherwise now for them, it's a lot of back and forth. You didn't make this change, now you gotta go back to your engineers, you're gonna spend more money to make more plans and print more plan sets. So that's kind of been our focus there.
Can you describe your experience working collaboratively with other units of government or organizations? Describe how building these types of relationships benefited the community or organization you work for.
Yes, I have really great relationships with a variety of different staff in Hennepin County. I think some of those relationships have lent to the city being able to receive grant dollars for a lot of different projects that we've done, whether it's, we just got funding for a downtown facade enhancement program from the county. I've got them to fund a number of different studies that we've completed recently. I think, so those are a couple of good examples from the county perspective. With the county too, sometimes it's just a matter of having those good staff connections to say, okay, who do I need to talk to about this issue? Or who up the ladder do I need to go have this conversation with? So having that sort of help in that regard. Also helps to have people sort of on the inside there to be able to say, let's just have a realistic discussion about this is what the city wants to accomplish with the developer. Is the county really gonna require that, as an example? We've had that in a few cases where the county wanted us to rebuild a ditch section that made no sense. And finally got them to relent that it wasn't necessary, but it would be the only section of the county road that would have these really beautiful, nice ditches and everything else that was like that. So it didn't make sense to make the developer have to pay to do something that the county wasn't doing themselves elsewhere. You know, MnDOT, I've been able to, Metro Transit, when I was in Maple Plain, we brought in a park and ride facility. That was $1.5 million roughly total project cost of the city, only spent $37,000 on. We were able to secure funding from Hennepin County through a TOD grant. I got Metro Transit to design the site, and MnDOT paid for it, paid for the construction of it. I've been successful with the legislature getting state appropriations dollars for different projects. Public Facilities Authority for our water treatment plant in Maple Plain. I did get some federal money for the Maple Plain water treatment plant as well, because of some of the environmental things that were going on in our water. You know, I do enjoy the legislative side of things too, so if there's things that the city's looking to advocate for, I've had to testify in front of legislative hearings and, you know, present information and help get bills jacketed and those sorts of things from that perspective. So I felt that I've always had really good success, and if not, at least I understand the process enough to be able to help the city facilitate what ultimately direction it's going in with those relationships. So.
Can I ask a follow-up question, and I'm gonna ask that this gets added, but sometimes we have to challenge it's good to collaborate and also challenge other jurisdictions, you know, like Hennepin County, or whatever. Could you do the same and describe your experience challenging other units of government organizations?
Well, when we built the park and ride in Maple Plain, Metro Transit said they would never bring bus service out there. So we had to join the transit taxing district, but even after we did that, they said, well, bus service isn't gonna come for 50 years. Well, what if I get the site and I get the funding to build it? Will you build it? Well, maybe. Well, then, you know, even though I worked on it for 5 years, six months after that conversation, I got grant funding to buy the land, build the site. And so they were compelled at that point to bring bus service, because we had an agreement in some respects with that. Also in Maple Plain, one of the big things was we have everybody's probably driven through there, but you got that big sweeping curve on Highway 12 as it goes through town. We have people that would cross it all the time, and our police department was concerned, somebody's gonna get hit. We've had a few near misses in that area. So we wanted to put in a highly activated crosswalk. It's called a hot system. You push the button, the light flashes, and it turns red, and cars are supposed to stop. And we approached MnDOT on that. Nope, we've never done it in a highway system anywhere else, which wasn't true, because they'd done it in St. Cloud. And they actually had also done it in Forest Lake, so we knew that wasn't the case. So we said, well, you've done it in these locations, well, those are different. So we continued the discussion and kind of worked our way up the ladder and got in front of the Metro District Director, I can't remember exactly what his title was. And we said, well, here's what we're trying to accomplish. This is a public safety issue. We don't want to put a signal in the middle of town, but we need to figure out a path forward on this. And he said, well, if you move the hot signal 100 feet to the east, we can work with you on that. So it moved 100 feet to the east, and we built it. So it was interesting. I joke because we sat in the meeting with MnDOT, and I always say that it's always fun to go to those meetings because you're one person or two people in a room of 30, and they're all going to tell you no, except for one person. And so it was interesting to kind of go through that process. Just go around the table, and you kind of felt like, okay, so it's all going to be no, so who here is willing to sort of have the conversation with us? And so, you know, we had some good relationships with other individuals. They were able to sort of get us in front of the district chairman or director and sort of have a discussion with them and kind of work through that and help them understand what we were trying to accomplish. And he said, well, you know, like I said, if you move it over this way, we should be able to work with you on that. But MnDOT's not paying for it. That's fine, we're not asking you to pay for it. We did go after legislative funding to pay for it and got the bill sponsored, and it failed through committee because it was, you know, they like to fund big regional things, and ours was a very localized project, even though it had ramifications for a state highway system. But council was willing to put up the dollars to put it in because it was a public safety issue with the city. So
that's a good example.
We have about 8 questions about 20 minutes, so we're okay.
And you've kind of touched on this a little bit, but maybe you can give us just a little more detail. Question 11 is, describe how you become involved in the corporate community.
Yeah, I think, within that first few days, the first sort of month is really kind of getting a handle from the council, like, who are the residents that I should meet with? Really get to know who are the business owners, especially that you want me to get to meet. So I kind of make sure that I'm going out of my way to sort of meet with those individuals right away. As your community festival and other things sort of comes up, it's opportunities to sort of get out and mingle with that. I like to have more of a city presence in some of those sorts of things. So if there's some different opportunities in that way, can the city have a booth at any sort of city functions that are out there that gives me more of an opportunity, kind of like shining a beacon, like here's, city, come talk to the staff, talk about issues, those sorts of things. A lot of it's just kind of really getting a feel for, who are the people in the community that I should be interacting with or getting to know right away. I think I try to take the lead from staff and council, sort of initially, on that aspect. And then when opportunities come up, whether it's meeting with the different school districts to sort of introduce myself to them and have regular meetings with those superintendents or, principals that sort of service the school, service the community. If there's different business organizations, some communities love chambers of commerce or, business associations, is to participate in those sorts of things. On occasion, I know in the past when I was in North St. Paul, they had a historical society, they asked me to come and speak on several occasions, and as a history person that likes history, I always get the opportunity to go in. They gave me a tour of the history museum, which was pretty neat, and then kind of introduce myself as a manager, and there were several occasions where they would invite us to come back and do those sorts of things. So, I'm always trying to make myself open and available for if I get an invitation to come meet with the group. Lions Club, I've done Rotary presentations before, those sorts of things. So, I think it's just a matter of, one, being open, so if people approach us, or if you guys have suggestions that you think you should be taking time to visit, it'd be great if you guys also came along, the mayor came along, the council member, to introduce me to that person too. I think that helps with the discussion as well, so.
Can you provide an example of how you have been a change agent within an organization?
And when I went to North St. Paul, it was a very siloed organization. And to starting to move the things in a different direction, to sort of get them out of the silos and really start building a lot of the team aspects that you guys have here. Took a lot of convincing, took a lot of me to try and get people to understand that you gotta try it, you gotta experience it, you gotta understand what we're trying to accomplish. And it took some time to ultimately sort of get to that aspect. That was a really big thing, I think, that I heard from the council and from the staff. We had one of the things the council let me do there was we were able to shut down city operations for a couple different days over the first few months. We had all staff retreats and we just kind of talked about a variety of different things. Gave staff kind of a platform to talk through some things and opportunities that they saw and talk about what they saw as the culture of the organization today, what they wanted it to be. It sort of helped me then say, well, this is kind of what staff wants. And so as we talk with department heads and staff and try to break down the silos, here's what everybody's saying, and we need to work together to ultimately sort of get to that position and get to that place. And a lot of it was just me being persistent and being patient and sort of, we were able to hire some people in the leadership positions. We were able to hire some people at the staff level positions that really fit that culture of what people want it to be. So when you bring people in that want that and buy into that, it sort of helps other people sort of come along, especially those that maybe are a little bit more distant or maybe, well, I'll wait and see what's going to happen. So it's just that aspect of, we're going in this direction that's sort of helping them sort of buy into that and recognize that some people are going to jump in with 2 feet and some people are going to take a little bit more time. But like I said, we were able to bring on some staff. We hired 6 new police officers that were great and sort of reshaped the police department literally overnight just because of the personalities that they brought into the department. So I think that's the aspect of one was recognizing what needed to change and how it needed to change, but that was multiple years of having it been that way, and it wasn't going to change overnight. So it's just having to recognize it's going to take some time ultimately to get to the end result. And even once you're close to it, you're still always kind of working on that to maintain that once you're there. So.
I'll link it straight away, or ask In your current role, what is the most difficult decision you made? And how did you come to that decision?
I don't know that it was a difficult decision. I think it was a difficult position to be in. We've had a few developments that have come into the community, and knowing that they were the right decisions that the community needed to make, of having to sort of, when it seemed like the discussions were going off the rails a little bit, as an example with the planning commission, was sort of putting myself in the position to say, okay, we need to have a discussion about this development and why this is a good development. You can certainly make a recommendation to deny, or you can deny the application, but we also have to sort of take a step back and look at how this fits into the city's overall long-range plan, housing needs within the community. And I had to be somewhat frank about the aspect of, we kind of have to detach a little bit that every developer that's coming in here, it's all about the money. Developers aren't going to do a project that they're not going to sell, that they can't market to. They're not going to build the type of housing that nobody wants. So it's great to be able to have a position that you don't want that type of housing in town, but we also can't keep building the same type of housing over and over and over and over again. At some point, we've heard from the corporations in the community that we don't have housing, the type of housing that their employees need. At the end of the day, people are going to decide to live wherever they live for whatever particular reason, but we have to be able to provide that type of housing, and we're not doing it right now. So you might not like the narrower lot with the, with the smaller homes, where the homes aren't, on the sites, they're not half-acre lots, or they're not, whatever they are, but that's what's selling right now, that's what the developers are building. And actually, the location of this development that I'm thinking of specifically was, it's a perfect fit for that area. It's got, wetlands and other things on this side, and it's got a little bit more higher density type of stuff, or smaller home sites to the north. It's a good fit, and it's going to introduce housing types that we need in town. Slab on grade, and even though it wasn't a senior type of development, it was going to be attractive to that, which was a good thing. And we heard from some longtime residents that there was no housing types for them to be able to move into. So I think a lot of those discussion points sort of helped navigate the discussion. It was a difficult position because as a staff person, you try to remain as neutral as possible. And I know there were a few that didn't like that position on that, but I felt it was necessary for me to sort of guide that discussion and sort of lead it down the way. That way, being cautious and cognizant that I didn't necessarily want to seem like I was working for the developer either at the same time. But and I think that as a staff person and a professional, I think I expect that people look to me to give a recommendation, of approval or denial, one way or the other, and knowing that that's been well researched, it's based on whatever factors, and if it helps to achieve a goal or a vision, as much as we may not necessarily like it or at that location, it's actually helping to accomplish something that we've established as important to the community. So.
Thank you.
Number 14 is describe a situation that you feel demonstrates your integrity and ethical standards.
Yeah, I had an incident in the community where we had a project that property owner wanted to do something in an area that was allowed. They wanted to bring in sort of a two-family structure into the neighborhood. That side of the road allowed for a two-family structure, the other side didn't, so we had a little bit of sort of conflict within the neighborhood. Actually had a council member that stirred the pot in the residential neighborhood and passed out flyers telling people to show up to the planning commission to get it denied. So, two factors associated with that. One is this individual had every right to do that because it was allowed by zoning. And so having to have a conversation with that council member that was asking us to deny it, to put a moratorium in place, to do all these sorts of things that made it extremely difficult and put the city in a very potentially legal disadvantage with regards to that. And having to explain to that individual that I understand that you disagree with it, I understand that this is next door to you, I understand all those sorts of things, but your code allows for it, your comp plan allows for it, you're obligated to sort of approve it. They're not asking for anything special that where you could say denied. They're following the bounds of what your policy states. And so you can't sort of go back and change it now and then say, sorry, you can't do that. And a moratorium isn't going to help you accomplish that same thing. If you don't like it, you and the rest of the council members can go back and change it. You know, I know there were some personality conflicts that were going on there. There was some disagreements between some people in the neighborhood and this property owner that owned the property that also lived in the community, but if we can't focus on the personality aspect, we can only base it on what they're asking, and as long as they're not asking for anything special, you have to approve it. The other aspect that made it a challenging position was having them have a conversation with the council member that you cannot vote on this issue because you have compromised your position and you have now created a conflict on the item. So you have to actually recuse yourself from any discussions associated with that. So that was not a fun conversation.
10 minutes about that question.
If you're hired for this position and are still with the organization 5 years from now, how do you think the organization will be different?
I don't know that I would say it would be different. I would say I think we've hopefully grown to new heights. I think, you know, when I look at, when I look at from the staff perspective, I think a lot of the real focus is, you know, where are the staff at today and what are the things, where do they want to grow to? I think it's great to send staff to training seminars and different things, but I'm hoping that at that point that we've given more staff an opportunity to sort of spread their wings, take on some new functions or new opportunities, maybe some areas of interest that they have, but also sort of hopefully help those employees sort of grow professionally and move up in a leadership capacity to the point that, you know, at some point you're going to have turnover within the organization. And whether you need somebody to step in on a limited temporary basis or somebody that's going to be here permanently, it's great to have people and options to say, you know, they've worked their way up through the organization, they've done all these sorts of things that we've asked, they've taken all, you know, this additional education, we're ready for the next challenge. And I think then the council sort of can look at that and say, you know, we're continuing on with the path that we're on right now, where we're maintaining that really good, strong staff, and we're investing in the staff from that standpoint. The staff want to be here, and because staff want to be here, we're attracting, as the staffing continues to grow now, we're attracting other staff to come in that really want to be here, and again, help to continue on with that organizational aspect. I would say, you know, as a manager, you know, obviously I can look at, you know, hopefully we're underway with the town center, and we've done a lot of different things with that. We've accomplished a lot of other things. The water treatment plant's open, and, you know, hopefully that's leading to some new development, that, you know, industrial development or other opportunities that might potentially come your way as a result of having that in place. But I think as a manager, you're always like, how are we continuing to grow the organization? You know, how does the organization then mesh with the community, and are we actively engaged in sort of working together in all those facets? So, to me, all the things that we accomplish here all are predicated on the success of staff and the staff that you have here that's helping you to deliver the services that you want to.
Question 16 is, what have you done in your current position or previous positions that made a significant difference to the organization and for which you believe you will be remembered?
You know, I like to think that my time in North St. Paul, 4 years, although relatively short, it's fun to look back and see a lot of the different things that we put a lot of energy, I put a lot of energy and effort into, not just me, but with staff, to really sort of reestablish City Hall as not just City Hall in the community, but that we were actually people. We did a lot of things. We did a Citizens Academy for a couple years. We were actively involved in all the different community events that were out there. We did public safety open houses. I think we did a public works open house. And so I think the goal was to really reestablish that strength and that bond between the citizens, the residents and the businesses in the community, and I guess for the lack of a better term, City Hall, if you will, but for the staff that worked there. You know, there was an incident years prior to my arrival where all the bars in the community felt that the police department was sort of anti-drinking establishments, because there was an incident where, I don't remember the whole story behind it, but actually had nothing to do with the city. It had everything to do with Ramsey County. That had, you know, they felt that the bars in the community and the car show folks, they had a 60-minute car show there, felt that the police department was patrolling the car show waiting for people to get in their car and leave. And actually it was Ramsey County that was doing stops not too far away. They were doing their DUI sort of enforcement stuff. So, you know, I was asked to go sit down with the bar owners, and we restarted those relationships, and I started bringing the police chief with me, and I had a couple of other council members that came along. So we were able to really strengthen those relationships that we had with them, and can tell you that when I left the organization and moved on to Rogers, I had a couple of them reach out to me and just say, thanks for all your energy and effort and, the positivity and sort of helping us feel that we're, an important part of the community and organization, and you understood that, we don't want to cause problems in the community, and we want to be a very active, business in the community, and we want a lot of positive things like the city wants to accomplish. And, during my time there, I was able to get some of them to serve on a couple different citizen advisory panels that the council put together on a few different issues, and they were excited to be asked to be part of that. So I would say that's the one thing I look back on, and I think I take great pride in helping establish some of these connections.
Isn't a thank you so awesome?
It was.
That's
That actually came entirely out of left field.
Yeah.
It wasn't anticipated.
That's cool. I have the grand poobah of questions. Why should the city council select you as their next city administrator?
Yeah, I mean, you've got three candidates, one internal. I've known Jessica a long time. I think she's great. And, when I look at it, I think a lot of the different things that I bring to the table, experience, expertise, skills, having done a lot of the different things, have been in the trenches with the council, different councils working through things that are difficult, where you're gonna catch flack from the community because you have to make a decision that's in the best interest that they're gonna disagree with. I 15 years in the business, you kind of tend to develop some tough skin to be able to handle some of those things. I've often joked that I got into the business knowing that I put a dartboard on my back. And I kind of wear it with pride, I guess, in some respects, because the things that I do are in the best, the recommendations I make, the decisions I make, the work that we do are all in the best interest of the community, not just today, but long term. And hopefully through, ongoing, education and engagement with the community, that, and me bringing that sort of side of me into this position, is just gonna benefit the community long term, and it's gonna help make a lot of those decisions easier, or even if people still disagree, at least they understand why a decision is being made the way it's being made. And, I'm not afraid to sort of, get in the trenches and stand in front of a community of people that maybe they're upset about things and try to explain why. I understand that they're not always gonna be happy with what I have to tell them, or that they're gonna disagree with what I'm saying, or that they feel like I'm just trying to push the community in a particular direction, but there's reasons and rationales for that to get to that position. So all of those sorts of things, I bring with me those 15 years of experience. I think that's a value to Corcoran, especially with a lot of the things you want to accomplish here, a lot of the things that the staff would like to see continue on, having experience helping to develop and mentor staff on that side. And as a person that appreciates, the challenges that you have, kind of exciting to sort of help get involved in some of those challenges that you have and hopefully shape what that future looks like. So, my community orientation, me as a personality, if I just separate all those other things, to me, I look at that and say those are huge assets to the city coming in, because we all have experience, but I think it's an aspect of who you're looking for as an individual and all of the things that you have. And some of your questions are really geared at how are you going to help us do these sorts of things. So you need the individual that's willing to sort of be at your side, sort of helping you take those steps and helping you to educate the community and engage the community. So that's going forward. So, I'm excited about the opportunity that's here. Hopefully you feel the same, and then we're moving on to the next step after today. So.
Thank you, Jason.
Last and final question, I believe. Very good, Jeff. Do you have any questions for us, individuals, group?
No,
Be careful, because we got all
if I ask, I'm running out of time. Is that No, I honestly don't. When I asked the department heads, when I visited with them, it's, we joked afterwards. I wasn't necessarily trying to eulogize Brad, but I was trying to just say, I've known Brad for a long time, and I think he brought a lot of attributes. And so sometimes a manager coming into this role in this position, it's the things of that manager that I think was very well respected by everybody. What are some of those attributes that you think you want to make sure continue on? And what are some of the things that you think that you would like to see, new opportunities that a new manager or administrator could bring into the role? I think it's helpful for me to understand, like, there might be some things that I want to try, but I might need to balance some of those things out a little bit. But I think there's a lot of similarities, but at the same time, I'm not going to be that same individual either. So
Okay. What do I want you to do? I want you to use the things that have been put in place and then ask us what we want to do next. In the office. And Brad had great ideas. Brad's love was parks, all of that stuff. And he did a wonderful job getting us to where we are today. Staying in the same way it's been a long time. The place out there is a huge start to our downtown and such. Yeah, I don't want to say anymore. Question that I do have though, how do you unwind, how do you disconnect? Or is this a 24/7 job in your mind?
I coach my son's baseball team,
There you go. Don't need to say anymore. Cool.
so
Thank you.
I'm very actively involved with my kids, so, and I don't do it because I try to be a helicopter parent, I do it because I love being around that stuff.
Outstanding.
So that's kind of my unwinding, if you will, even though I feel like I'm always on the go,
Oh, and you got a hockey game you
but I do, yeah.
Awesome.
I don't have anything else, thank you. It was a pleasure to meet you guys.
Great to meet you. Good job.
Thanks for coming. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks a lot.
John, thanks. Nice to meet you. Aaron?
Thank you. You're, on Wednesday.
Yeah, me too. I think he's
Yeah,
what
you
it
can
was.
do other one more water if you want to.
I'm
not sure.
drinking fountain.
Okay.
Gotcha program, so
That means I have to.
I think they're called Minnesota mosquitoes.
I'm still recording.
All right.
We're still rolling our
It'll be entertaining.
recording.
Have fun. See
So
ya.
it's important for the
It
public
is
to know.
to know that we need to take quick little breaks.
Mhm.
Does anybody need any water? Okay.
You're on for a swim break?
Yeah. for a little bit.
It's fine. It's actually cool.
Yesterday was either.
A lot better than last night.
All right.
Recording stopped.
Pause this one too.